Hello everyone, welcome to part two of this weird series that I'm doing. It's been a bit longer than I wanted it to be since my last video, and I've had a bit of a trim too. So the good news is, just a quick update on my symptoms first and where I'm at. The good news is over the past few weeks my symptoms have settled down somewhat. I'm not getting as much pain as I was. I'm still passing a bit of blood, which isn't ideal, but things are going in the right direction generally, it feels. The only bad news is over the last few weeks is that, and I'm reading some of this by the way, I made some notes. The bad news is over the last few weeks, the symptoms from the meds I'm on have knocked me about a bit. So I've had this this crazy sort of acid reflux thing where it's just been really painful here, and then my appetite went, and then I felt really tired and fatigued. I got acne for the first time. Well, I'd never even got acne as a teenager actually. So on my face, I don't know if you can see it, on my forehead, and all on my chest, which is really annoying. Like fine, like, you know, it wasn't bothering me, but just, you know what acne do. And then my hair started falling out too, which is why I went for the old buzz cut. I mean, the medication might have nothing to do with that, with the meds I'm on. I am getting on a bit, so maybe I'm just losing it. Who knows? But yeah, it looks alright, I think. Anyway, so that was just a quick update on where I am at the moment. And so in this video, what I wanted to do was touch upon why I think my Crohn's flared up after having 10 years of just literally nothing, like not even a peep out of it. You know, 10 years of just bliss, just nothing. So as I mentioned sort of in my last video, back in the summer of 2020, when it first started to rear its head again, it was around my bum, like, so I had no pain in my intestines or anything, just around, like, right on my bum. I was just having some discomfort, a bit of itchiness, just felt like a bit inflamed around there, and that's sort of generally where my Crohn's affects me, towards the end of my digestive system, like lower bit of the large intestine, the rectum, and my bumhole. God man, can't believe I'm saying some of this shit. So that was around the summer of 2020, and around the same time the relationship I was in ended. And while I was certainly sad about that relationship ending, it was more the pattern of how that relationship was very similar to how other relationships had ended. It was pretty much identical, to be honest. So at that point in 2020, it was sort of 4 serious relationships I'd been in, and then in 2020 I was 3 in the last 5 years, and the pattern of how they'd ended from my point of view would be the same. So and this will have a point. Me jumping into my relationship history will have a point, I promise. So the pattern would be the same. I'd meet a girl I liked, you know, really liked. The relationship would start really well. Like, you know, I'd be really affectionate, outgoing, you know, just really nice start to the relationship. But then slowly over time, I would start to get more insular, more cold, more critical of them, until eventually I'd kind of like suck the life out of the relationship. And then either the relationship would end, or, you know, they'd have enough, quite understandably, as things would get sort of quite toxic, you know. Like I felt like I don't feel toxic now, and never really did when I'm single, but when I got in relationships, I felt like I became quite toxic, you know, especially towards the end. And then once it would end, the relationship would be finished, it was like I'd come to my senses and see what I'd kind of become, you know, like it's hard to explain, but almost like Jekyll and Hyde. Like I'd been this person at the start of a relationship, and then slowly morphed into this sort of other person. Then the relationship would end. It'd be almost like a wake-up call then about, what the fuck, it's happened again, like every time. So when the relationship ended in 2020, I was just like, no, this can't have happened again. I need to figure this pattern out. Like I need to go in and figure it out. And while all relationships are 50-50 and some are just not meant to be, you know, it was more that I could clearly see the role I'd played in each relationship disintegrating. And it was because it was pretty much identical each time that I had this sort of reaction in 2020 that I needed to figure it out. And just another side point, you know, sort of, I think while I got this sense of me being toxic in relationships, and it was most acute in relationships, and I'll probably talk about this more in other videos, I'd always had this sense just generally of me being a bit sort of self-loathing and not being ever fully sort of comfortable with myself. And that links to sort of some of the trauma issues I'm going to talk about in the past. But yeah, just that distinction where it got most acute relationships. But generally, I think I had that sense about myself. So anyway, talk about that more later. So back to the summer of 2020, a relationship ended. And I think a few other things took me to a point where I became a bit sort of manic looking back. I think lockdown really affected me. Like it affected everyone, you know, I wasn't unique there at all. But lockdown, what it revealed to me was sort of how unstable my life was, especially my housing situation in London. You know, it was a pretty awful house share I was in, and never somewhere I could have spent lockdown. So it kind of left me like in limbo. Like I'd moved to my ex-girlfriend's and I just had nowhere else to go. I felt sort of, I think I kind of backed myself into a corner and I've made myself feel trapped. And then at the end of 2019, I'd started therapy for the first time. So I'd working through a load of stuff, got it all sort of out in the open on the table, and then the sessions got really disrupted with COVID. So it was just all kind of started the work and then just like, yeah, just left sort of in limbo. So kind of, man, this is such a sob story, isn't it? So by the summer, I was in such a low place, a place where I was just like, you know, what the fuck is happening? Like, how did I get here? Because if I go back to the end of 2019, life felt pretty good. I was enjoying my job, was involved in some really exciting projects. I felt really confident, was doing loads of public speaking. I was happy, I had a girlfriend, I was working through this trauma stuff with my therapist. And then, I don't know, man, like a few short months later, I felt like I was just having a breakdown. Like everything had just sort of like fallen apart. So that summer, I just made a decision. I remember the date. It was the 21st of June 2020. I remember it because I'd sent a sad message to my ex-girlfriend. I mean, one of many. Oh God, it's embarrassing, this is. And she was just like, look, mate, we're done. Focus on yourself, bro. And actually, if I think about it, I am quite grateful for how patient she was with me back then, because I went a bit insane, and maybe I still am, I don't know, who knows. And the decision I just made back then was I have to figure myself out. Like, I have to confront myself. You know, this pattern that happens in relationships needs to be understood, and that general feeling outside of relationships of just self-loathing and not being comfortable in my own skin, like that is not okay. It's not okay anymore because I'm ignoring something quite serious. So I made that decision to confront myself, and by that point I was at my mum's in the lovely Staffordshire countryside. It was still not locked down, and I dived quite brutally, like in terms of like self-care and self-love and being kind to yourself. I was not any of those things. I dived quite brutally and perhaps a little irresponsibly into my past. Like I say, I had to figure out what was going on. And so I effectively opened the box, and I jumped in sort of feet first and looked at some trauma that I'd always been aware of in sort of the periphery, but never like had the courage or impetus, you know, to fully look at it, like the drive and ambition to look at it. Like I think it is quite an ambitious thing to do. So yeah, so all these things from my childhood that were so big and scary to me, I kind of, like I say, jumped in feet first and looked at. And this is where I think, you know, hopefully I'll link it back to my Crohn's, because I think in the process of doing that, over a good few months from the summer 2020 onwards, I just overwhelmed myself. I was really lost back then, and perhaps still am, now. And the way I went about it, I think just overloaded my mind, it overloaded my body, and I really stressed myself out, and I really do believe that sort of stress that I kind of, I guess voluntarily put myself through, and still am maybe a little bit, it triggered an old injury. It caused my body to be like, look, bro, you're going too hard, slow down a bit. But I couldn't. And actually, if I think back to where I am now and how I feel about some of that trauma stuff, it doesn't feel as scary. And that's sort of, I think I mentioned in my last video that there is meaning to this flare up, and it kind of almost had to happen. But I think that's enough for today, and just my ramblings. And in my next video, I want to talk about more what I found in that box and how I kind of understood it, and made those things less scary and less kind of traumatic. So hopefully that won't be as long as a wait between my last video and this one. Hopefully I can do it a bit quicker. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you later.